Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. I'm Michael Van Patten. I'm the CFO of Summitry, a management consulting practice. My prior position was the CFO of True Influence, which is now Tyriad, a global marketing intelligence company, where I successfully merged two similar companies together. I've held multiple leadership roles in Blackbaud, Elastic Networks, NetMotion Wireless, IceWeb, and more, and have industry experience in technology, manufacturing, software, and SaaS. Today, I'm with Hyperbots as a partner, learning more about their journey and their AI-enhanced financial software products. I'm also joined by Fashina, who is one of the founding design CFO partners of Hyperbots. Let's let Io tell you a little bit about himself.
Thank you, Michael. As Michael said, my name is Fashina. I'm a strategic partner to Hyperbots, and I've been with them for over 2 years now, thereabout. And I started early supporting them in the design of the co-pilots that Hyperbot has rolled out. My background is in finance. And when I say finance, I mean corporate finance, project finance, internal finance, and whatever type of finance you could think of. I've dabbled in it over 25 years of experience. And I currently serve as one of the directors at the U.S. International Development Finance Corporation. And prior to that, I was a CFO at a scale-up, Kobo 360, who operates in Africa, in 7 African countries. And my experience with that startup actually helps with the support that I provided to Hyperbots, because all the pain points that a CFO and finance teams across the globe we experienced. When you think about it, startups are like a baby. So everything that could go wrong will go wrong. And your job as a CFO is to fix it. So I'm glad to be here today and to discuss how Hyperbots can at least ease some of the pain points of CFOs.
Thanks for joining us today. This session is all about the payment co-pilot and how it is changing the last mile of Procure-To-Pay.
Glad to walk you through it today. And when you think about it, automating payments and the timing of the decisions and execution has delivered benefits that we never thought possible. And that's the experience that most of the CFOs I've spoken to that has adopted Hyperbots, the feedback that they've given me. So I'd like to unpack this today a little bit so our audiences can understand what we're talking about.
Why is outbound payment processing still painful?
Painful. It is painful. And it's a lot of reasons why it's painful when you think about it. There's a lot of mundane, tedious tasks that's involved in payment processing. There are missed early payment discounts that you could have taken advantage of that you miss if you don't actually know about it or if you don't process the payment quickly enough. So analysts in the current reality, they key in invoices into a calendar and hope that the CFO signs on time. So they say, I'll put on all the payments and send it to the CFO. They hand it over. Now, discounts are forfeited because they're not looking for this invoice. If we pay 10 days sooner, we get 5% discount. Because they have the volume of work that they have to do, they can't really think about that. Another issue is late payments and penalties that you get from late payments. The reason for that is the same as what I was talking about before. Analysts put the invoices in, they wait for approvals from different hierarchy inside the organization. Approvals stall in the email chains. CFOs or whoever is approving gets a lot of email. So the email can be lost and you don't get to approve it on time, then the payment gets late. And then you have to pay extra fees and the friction with your vendor because they say, this guy doesn't pay on time. I'm not really sure I want to work with you anymore. Another thing that could be a pain point is the bottleneck itself that creates all these initial pain points that I was talking about. The bottleneck is, in some organizations, only the CFO that can approve payments. That means if the CFO is busy, maybe CFO is traveling, nothing gets done. And then you have an issue when everything is stuck, with the CFO waiting for it. There's also multiple payment rails. Some companies, because they've been around for a while, they have different types of payments that they do. The new age companies, they tend to do more electronic payments. But the older companies, they have ACH, they have checks, they have virtual cards, they have all sorts that's siloed in the different bank portals that they use. They don't have API connection with their banks where they could easily just send the payments from their own system and it automatically talks to the bank to get it done. So you have a lot of high manual effort to reconcile when you have the reconciliation of all the bank accounts because of this. There's also duplicates, fraudulent payments. You have slow reconciliation, and you have weak audit trail. When it's time to audit and you try to figure out what happened, now you have to start looking at Excel files. You have to start looking at Outlook approvals. You have to start looking at different things in order to be able to get together the audit trail in order for audits or for internal or external audits. And so those are some of the pain points that the Hyperbots Payment Co-Pilot has been able to ease for finance professionals.
That's great. So what exactly is Hyperbots Payment Co-Pilot?
Thank you for asking. The way I would describe it is the co-pilot is a 24/7 agentic controller that you have that's always working in the background and processing all these payments. So one, it recommends the perfect payment date because it's looked at the invoice, checked if there's an early discount, weighs that against the cash flow of the company, because just because you do early discount doesn't mean you want to take it, because cash is king and cash today is less than cash tomorrow. So you need to do the math, and the AI does the math for you to see if I pay sooner and I get this discount, is that better for me? Another thing that the Copilot does is it drives approval through a flexible workflow. So whether it's Slack you're using or Teams you're using, it can be set up whereby the approval workflow is there. It goes to the next approval as the previous one approves it. And you don't have to chase people to approve things because automatically the Copilot sends reminders to people that are holding up the approval process in the workflow. Another thing that the Copilot does is it executes the payment. So what that means is that once you approve in your system, the final approval goes and the payment is approved finally, it could talk to the bank with API connections in order to be able to actually send the payments to the vendor without you necessarily have to log into the bank accounts and figure out how to send the payments of the batch of approval that you put in there, which is the way it's done now. But the Copilot can do that. The Copilot can also post it to your GL once all this is done, which means you don't have to do the extra step or actually posting the transaction into the general legal ledger. And then what the Copilot also does that I really like is it reconciles in real time. So it matches the bank data to the invoice and then flags any variances that may occur. And then it closes the loop. So everything is self-learning. And the more invoices you process using this Copilot and the vendors and the approval outcomes, the better the Copilot gets because it's always learning. It's like a 24/7 agent that's always learning.
Just like the rest of us, we're always learning, right?
Yes.
How does the Copilot work end to end?
So if I have to walk you through the Copilot end to end. So let's start from the invoice part. So invoice comes from the customer or the vendor, sorry. And the invoice can be scanned by the Copilot. So the Copilot looks at the invoice, pulls all the critical information out of the invoice. And then it goes into the terms and the cash position analysis in order to understand whether this invoice should be paid early or it should be paid at the right time. That's based on the math that it does that I was talking about, that the Copilot engine actually processes the math to say, oh, there's an early discount of 5%. Our cost of funding or the amount we make on this money, if we hold on to it for 10 days, is X%. Is it worth it? And then the next thing that the Copilot does is it does a recommendation of the timing of when you should pay and release their payment. So for each invoice or the vendor that's batched, the agent proposes a pay now, pay on X date, or hold on to due date. That's what it does after it does the math to figure out what's worth it for that particular invoice. And then it creates the approval workflow. So the roles, the limits, the delegation is configured from the back end when you set up the co-pilot. And then executives can approve just one tap in Teams or Slack or whatever you use in your organization. And then there's a payment file or API that could be connected to the banks, which I was talking about before, which is what actually enables you to be able to send the payments from your own system to the banking system and push virtually through international wires or ACH. And then there's a remittance and vendor portal update. So when a supplier gets a branded email from you, the portal notification with the invoice lists and the payment references are all captured by the co-pilot. And then when it comes to the bank reconciliation, because at the end of the day, you have to do the bank reconciliation because you've made all these payments, money went into the bank, money came out of the bank. It's a lot easier because the co-pilot keeps track of everything that's happened. If you remember, it's the one that's sending the wires, it's the one that prompting the bank to send the money for the payments. So it's just one touch button to actually pull everything that's been done. And it auto clears it for the ERP. And then for fraud and duplicate payments, because the co-pilot is running and checking things against vendor, payments, amount, timing, what was it for, the use of the actual invoice, it makes it very, very difficult to do double payment, duplicate payments. And then the fuzzy logic blocks on any payment that looks like a repeat is flagged. And then somebody has to check it to make sure that it's not a duplicate payment or a fraudulent payment. And then there's what we call hash change audit log. Now, every recommendation and approvals are file hash. And then the reconciliation step is searchable. And then you can use it in order to figure out, okay, what happened when this was processed initially? What was the flag? What was done by the person that actually dealt with the issue that was flagged? And how was it resolved? So that's how the co-pilot works end to end, from getting the invoice, capturing the information, all the way to the audit part of it.
What measurable value does co-pilot deliver?
So as I was saying when we started, speaking with some of the CFOs that has adopted these co-pilot, some of the gains that they've mentioned are around the discounts and early payment capturing of the early payment discount. So before, 23% is available for them, and that's what they capture. But with the co-pilots, you can actually capture 78% or more of those early discounts. So what that does is it's more than 3x the amount of early discount you can take advantage of using the co-pilot rather than using the old traditional way of manually checking through all these things. Then there's also the penalty avoidance. When you think about late fees, late payments, one CFO on average saves about $68,000 from late payments because they adopted the co-pilot. Because before, things fall through the crack on the approval processes, and then the payments are late. And then you have to pay the penalty because the vendors are important to you. You don't want to have a bad relationship with them. Then there's the processing cost itself. When you think about it, the AP effort per payment is a lot when it's manually processed as opposed to AI automated. The baseline, let's assume it's 100%. What we've seen is an 80% reduction in the processing cost based on full-time equivalent hours measurement. And then when you think about the reconciliation speed, because when you're doing bank reconciliation, the cash position, the visibility with the bank accounts, previously used to be T+5 for a reconciliation process to be done on a bank account. Now you can do it same day because a click of a button, it pulls the information, and then somebody checks through the information and it's done. So you have a 5-day gain in efficiency. And then when you talk about the fraud that I was talking about earlier, fraud, duplicates, payments, and all those things, you have to do annual write-offs. One CFO was telling me that $30,000 is what they used to write off annually around duplicate payments / fraud. But now it's zero because the co-pilot catches everything or flags it for somebody else to check. And then some of the intangibles are The auditability is gone up because of the audit trail. There's a satisfaction generally, and the morale of the finance team is better. And then it allows the finance team to think more strategically as opposed to always having to do all these mundane tasks. So the month-end stress level is a lot lower when you're closing the books because everything is being captured by the AI, and closing the books is a breeze.
That's great. Yeah, I think we could all use the savings in dollars and time going forward. How has ownership of payment tasks shifted?
Okay, so I'll go through some of the tasks that are in a typical invoice processing. So when you think about identifying the discounting and payment windows, that's on analyst spreadsheets, typically. The analysts will have a spreadsheet that they're checking to make sure, oh, where can we get a discount on some of these invoices? Now, the AI runs through all this thing in seconds and has a recommendation. XYZ, you can get XYZ discounts from them. Why don't you take it? And then when you talk about the launch of the payment run, there's an AP clerk that's responsible for that before. And then now that you're using Copilot, AI can trigger it. Because as we said before, there's an API connection for the payments. And then routing the approvals initially used to be, oh, I've done this. You send an email to your boss, next in line boss, or you have a paper trail. Take a piece of paper that's been processed and take it somebody to sign on and say approved. That's how it's been done before. But now, Teams workflow, Slack workflow could be used to do the approval process, and then reminders can be sent automatically to the people that's holding up the workflow. And then when you talk about the payments, generate ACH and the check file, bank portal export is what used to be done. So you have a batch of invoices that you want to pay, you export it to the bank portal, and then you start processing payments. Now you can have an API plug to the bank directly, and boom, payments are sent. When you talk about the REMI payment advice that goes out to the vendors, there's an Outlook template that does that historically. Now there's an automated process with the invoice list that goes out when the advice goes out. And then when you're reconciling the bank transactions, historically, you have the Excel download from the bank, and then you now start creating lookups, VLOOKUP, HLOOKUP, to figure out how to match things to invoices. Now there's a real-time agent that's matching it continuously. So all you have to do is just push a button and it spools the output for you. And then when you post GL, it used to be a manual journal entry that we used to do. But now if you're using the Payment Co-Pilot from Hyperbots, the auto posts and validate is available as an option that you could actually do. And it does it for you instantaneously.
That's great. I'm always nervous when I see a lot of manual journal entries on the books. What are some of the key functional capabilities that power those gains?
So some of the things that I've talked about before, early discount algorithms that actually runs the processing, the math behind should I go or should I not go with the early payments? You have the penalty avoidance logic that flags payments that are about to be late and make sure that the approvals are processed and the ACH connection is done to make sure it doesn't go late. There are flexible approval processes. You can do multi-level, you can do single level, you can do amount-based, you can do through the mobile phone. So there are various ways that you can do the approval. So you don't have to necessarily approve it through a laptop, sit down there, because some of the people that are approving the payments, they're busy people and they're on the move. So Hyperbots Payment Co-Pilot makes it a lot easier for you to actually get the approval done. Then there's the ACH check payments, which we now have API connection rails to the banks. We have the partial payment handling process. So it supports the retention of some amount when you have a dispute on an invoice. And then there's the bank and GL reconciliation that I was talking about before. The Copilot can help you do the reconciliation for the banks and also for the GL, because you can use the Copilot to post it to your GL entry. Then we have the fraud prevention layer, which essentially makes sure duplicate payments are flagged, bank charges alerts are sent, and even changes to what's been approved are sent as well. So you have the rich notification to vendor portal. You have the vendor portal that the vendors can actually go into and actually check on the status of a payment or the status of an invoice. So the supplier sees the purchase order and the payment path. So they can even follow it. So they don't have to call somebody and disturb some of your finance analysts that what's going on with my invoice? Have you started processing my invoice? It's like, hey, log on to the portal. You can see the process. You can see where it's at. You can see when it will be paid. And then you have the comprehensive audit trail that's inbuilt into this co-pilot. They make sure that the audits, whether it's internal, external audits, are done seamlessly. And then you have the multi-entry, multi-ERP interface that's built into it. So this co-pilot can work with your existing ERP. You don't have to change your ERP. We have compatibility to a lot of the ERPs that are most commonly used by finance teams across the globe right now. And if you use something that's not common, we can actually design a way for this co-pilot to work with your ERP, and typically within weeks, this can be done. So those are some of the key functionalities that I believe are the differentiating factors for the co-pilot.
Great. Yeah, I've used NetSuite and Dynamics and some of the others, and they seem to have a little bit of these functions, but not all of them. So, what is the competitive differentiation for Hyperbots?
I'm glad you asked. All those ERPs, because they've been around for a while, what they've been doing is adding AI to do some of the functions, a little bit of the functions. But the difference with Hyperbots is it's AI built from the ground up. So it's not something that's a retrofit. It's something that's purpose designed to use AI to actually do this process. And the good thing about Hyperbots when they were developing this is they didn't just have tech guys in a lab coming up with what they believe the finance people would like or will ease the pain of a finance professional. What they've done is they engage with a lot of CFOs, such as myself and others, to try and help them design and do the use case development for the co-pilot, because that helps to make sure that you're solving the real issues that are facing the finance professionals and accounting professionals, as opposed to some computer programmer thinking this is how you should solve the issues for the for the finance professionals. So just running through some of the differentiating factors, there's a decision intelligence part of the Hyperbots Payment Co-Pilot, which does AI timing and recommendation that I was talking about before. So payment due, manual pick is what those normal ERP used to do. You have to do the batches and set it out there. And then you have the approval user experience, which is more flexible for whatever workflow you use in your organization, whether it's Slack or whether it's Teams or whatever you use. You can plug into it and create a workflow using what your staff is used to already, as opposed to going into a separate web portal, which is now some of the AI payments that people use is, oh, we use something.com. So you have to log on to it separately to go and figure out how to run your payments through it and upload all your processes into it. What Hyperbots does is it creates that to integrate seamlessly with your existing system. So you don't have a separate portal to do the approval workflow or anything else that you may be doing on the Hyperbots Payments Co-Pilot. Then there's a real convergence whereby ACH, check, card, and wires are all in the same workflow. It's not like separate workflows like ordinarily you would do if you were doing the previous, the existing ERP, which are only single rail adaptability. Then you have the integrated reconciliation, real-time agentic reconciliation that's always checking and making sure that things match. Historically, the existing tools that we have in the market, they have next day bank file that they download, and then you do the manual matching, VLOOKUPs and HLOOKUPs to make sure that it's matching, as opposed to an agent doing it for you. Then there's the fraud deterrence that I was talking about before. Duplicate, bank changes are all built into this AI guardrails. And then historically, what we do is you have the basic positive pay only, and then it's later on that you're checking and doing reconciliation that you catch all these duplicate things, which are most of the time too late, and you have to write them off. Pricing, paper payment, no seat fees, as opposed to having a huge license fee that you pay for. Whether you use it or not, it doesn't really matter. And then you have to pay for the seats. How many of your analysts are able to log into this app that you're using? But this Hyperbots Own, you don't have to pay for that. It's all about just based on your paper payments. And it's a tiny amount for the huge amount of headache that it saves the finance team. And then the implementation for the Payment Co-Pilot is very quick. 4 weeks rollout, no custom codes, and you're in business. With all those other ERP systems, 3 to 6 month IT project, and then it doesn't work. And then you have to now teething issues for another year before people get used to it. And then you have to train your professionals in how to use it. Some people would know how to use it. Some people wouldn't know how to use it. You have issues cropping up. That's why a lot of finance teams don't like changing their ERP, because it's just a lot of work and a lot of time and a lot of cost. Audit evidence. You have the trail. Hash chain ledger is used to make sure that you have the audit trail. And then in the existing ones, you have the scattered document, because different things are processed in a different silo. And then you have to now start matching it. So in summary, Hyperbots does not just move money. It decides, it executes, it reconciles, and it proves that every payment that's going out of your organization has been cleared. So that's how I would put it.
Great. I appreciate that, Io. Give me a real brief summary takeaway for the audience.
So for our audience out there, finance professionals with pain points around payments, I would say that Hyperbots Payment Co-Pilot turns the last mile of Procure-To-Pay into an autonomous, discount optimized, fraud-proof workflow that cuts costs by over 80% and captures nearly all the early pay value that you can think of. And then it gives us live visibility of everything that's happening with our dollars. Because at the end of the day, when you think about it, cash is king for any organization. And having clear visibility on their cash going out of your organization is what everybody can dream of. Thank you, Michael.
Wow, that's great. I really appreciate it. It's been very helpful. Thank you for sharing more about Hyperbots functionalities and your experience using them. Thank you so much and have a great day.
You too, Michael. Thank you.